Good? Okay. Okay, so a very good evening to all of you, those on Zoom, and especially those who braved the weather to be here with us this evening. You always get a special welcome. So thank you for being here. So our topic tonight is expect the unexpected. Expect the unexpected. Life rarely goes according to plan, but surprises don't have to shake us. So how do we face change with confidence and a calm observer mindset? Learn the art of meeting the unexpected with clarity and a light heart. Clarity and a light heart. And maybe even joyfully. Because the unexpected can bring things to be happy about if you're paying attention, which is what we want to talk about tonight. You know, COVID was unexpected, right? And we had 2+ years of dealing with that. And over time, even those people found themselves in unusual and difficult situations, over time, people began to be very creative with the extra time that they had. And a lot of people came out of the experience of COVID with a very positive mindset. They discovered things about themselves that they didn't know they had in terms of talents. And they reached out to people that they hadn't thought about or maybe even remembered for quite some time because they were so busy with their lives. And it was a time that people found the means, and by that I mean the means within themselves, to face and to overcome a lot of challenges. And so we should think of the experience of COVID as a preparation for a lot more that we're going to have to be dealing with. And of course, you're seeing that now with the kind of unexpected things that are happening. And so, not to have us leave here apprehensive, but it's really, it would be, if we're not prepared for turning on the faucet one day and having no water come out of it, then we're really not paying attention to the times that we're in. So, without being too predictable, you can expect that to happen. You are also going to, you're going to flip the light switch on, and no lights are going to come on. you are also likely to put your bank card in the machine and no money is going to come out. Those are the times that we're living in, unfortunately. And so we thought that this would be a good topic to talk about. It's all around you. But it's an opportunity for us to be very resourceful, especially when we're not accustomed to being uncomfortable. There are a lot of things that are occurring here that have become quite normal for many people in many places around the world. And if you bring it home personally, as we were saying in the flyer, life doesn't always go as planned. I'll give you my own experience. I remember distinctly going to the funeral of a friend whose mother had passed away just a few months ago in April. And I left there, and I had to do a lot of walking because there was some difficulty with the subway. By the way, when I got off I came in from New Jersey this evening, and when I got off, none of the trains were going back to New Jersey. All of the trains were suspended because of flooding. Fortunately, I'm not going back until maybe half an hour from now. Maybe it has been resolved, but I have an alternative. At least I think, I can take a bus back. But that's the times that we're living in. Anyway, so I was able to get around. I was walking, and things were going very well. And 2 days later, I could barely walk. An old back injury that I had just showed up, and I couldn't get out of bed. And after now almost 6 months, I'm now beginning to recover from that after a lot of physical therapy and so on. But the fact that I was no longer as mobile as I used to be was very, 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 not just debilitating, but very, very scary. And for the first 6 or 7 weeks, I felt very victimized. And the main question that was coming up, as happens when these things happen, is why is this happening to me? That's the question we usually ask when we are facing adversity, especially if we don't think we deserve it, we haven't done anything to deserve this, well, why is this happening to me? And that went on for a while, and because of my meditation and looking at answering that question, it occurred to me that there must be a reason why this is happening. And the question changed. And I began to ask the question, why is this happening for me? And it changed everything. I got just as many answers, but all positive. And I began to, because I had to move very slowly. I was under a speed limit and a weight limit because the problem was with my back. And the first thing I began to notice, which I didn't notice before, is how helpful people are. And this is New York. there's a saying that if someone is helpful to you in New York, they're a tourist. Actually, that is not true. Because even though I couldn't walk, I was still able to ride a bicycle. And so I started putting my bike on the train and getting here and then using the bicycle to get to the center. And invariably, the elevator wouldn't be working. And so I would have to ask for help to get the bike up because I didn't have a lightweight bike. I'd lost my lightweight bike, and people were so helpful. I just had to stand there, and people would ask me if I needed help, and that really surprised me. So I started paying attention, and then I started to pay attention to the route I was taking because. I took the same route all the time when I was very mobile and in a hurry, and there are things and people I just didn't notice, and I started to appreciate just the city in a way that I hadn't appreciated it before. I started to see the things that were ornate on the buildings, and I started to notice the architecture. But most important of all, I started to, as people would walk past me, I started to appreciate for the first time in a real way what it means to be well, what it means to be healthy, because you kind of just take that for granted. And so I was able to develop a whole new relationship with my surroundings. I became more alert because, of course, I can't run across the street if I misjudge the timing of the light. So I developed a lot of patience over any waiting that I had to do, and I also developed a better plan because, of course, it took me more time to get anywhere that I was going. So I started planning more and being more attentive and also noticing people around me for the first time in a way that I hadn't noticed before. And a lot of the people on the train that I was traveling with, I became friendly with a whole lot of people in the last 5 months, and so I started sharing knowledge with them and giving them blessing cards, and a lot of things began to happen. And so I am not quite back to health yet, but all of the suffering disappeared. There was still pain, but there was no suffering, and I began to appreciate the injury, and so that experience has had me look at everything very differently. And in the middle of this period I'm talking about, from April to now, I developed a very severe pain, and I couldn't understand because I'd had a tooth removed, and there was severe pain and swelling, and I went to the dentist, and she tells me that when they extracted the tooth, they left a piece of tooth in there that had gotten infected. So in the middle of dealing with my back injury, I had to have oral surgery. But I was ready for the oral surgery like never before, because the interesting thing about your body is that it has its own priorities. The back issues stopped being an issue immediately. And the only thing I was present to was the difficulty now and the more severe pain. And I remember going for the surgery, and even as I was being, because it took 3 hours, and I felt so, I was so appreciative of the surgeon and the assistant that took care of me. You know, I actually was admiring what they were, that they could be, because I mean, I don't even want to look in my own mouth. And there they were taking their time and making sure that I'm okay. And all the time I am in so much gratitude for the kind of work that they do, and I really came away from that experience so much more appreciative of healthcare workers. But what had happened over that time is that there was a very important shift in my perspective. And this is I've always heard it said that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so whatever you are dealing with that seems adverse, there is something beneficial there that you need to look and see what that is. Because, you know, there's a lesson. Life is a school, but if you're not paying attention, then you just think of yourself as being victimized. You know, we have things in this duality of win or lose. And so I came away from that experience, which I'm still going through. And now it's clear for me that it doesn't have to be win or lose, it's win or learn. And so this idea that when something happens that it's adverse and happening to you, you can begin to look and see where the benefit is. And so we wanted to make this very interactive this evening, and we wanted you to look at your own life, your own situation, and think of what it is that might be, that you might consider adverse that's going on now in your life, that you have not asked yourself, why is this happening for me? And see what the benefits are that you may be overlooking, that you can benefit from, and not only benefit from personally, but share in such a way that you come away with the lesson, and it allows you to have a whole different outlook. And so the things I was mentioning that I'm sure are going to come, so that when you flip the light on, or you hit the light switch and the lights don't come on, or you turn the faucet on and there's no water, or you can't get where you're going because the trains are not running, that you don't as the flyer is saying, you don't lose your way. You don't in other words, you go within and look to see what is beneficial and what you can learn from it. So we'd like you to take a moment right now, those of you on Zoom as well, and ask yourself that question regarding whatever it is that you are treating as adverse, and see what the benefit is, and see what lessons you have learned that you can share. I promise you, you're going to be very surprised And so I'm going to stop talking for the moment and have you either talk to each other or talk to yourself if you're on Zoom. Maybe for about 10 minutes, Achal? Yeah, maybe for about 10 minutes. And then we want to hear what you've discovered that you hadn't thought about. And not only that, but what you might be able to do with that new perspective and see what the changes are. Okay?
Just collective. I just asked him, I was like, what came to mind first was the question I asked him. And was that the thing that you stayed with?
So, Barna, what adverse situations have you been dealing with? What came to mind as I was sharing?
I'm struggling with time and like handling everything that I intend to do within the day and actually managing to get it done. It's not just about like managing my time better, because I think I'm textbook wise, I'm doing everything I can.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like my attitude towards time itself needs to go through a change. So my perspective on time is what I am really re-evaluating. Like in our everyday learning, one of the things that is sort of drilled into us almost every day is that time is beneficial. These are times that are beneficial. For multiple reasons are cited why the time is beneficial. So I'm like, why am I not feeling the beneficial aspect of time? Where am I stuck? What needs to change in my perception?
So you need to make time your friend.
I need to make time my friend.
Okay.
But like I said, like this is still work in progress. I'm still sort of grappling with what perceptions I can change. So one thing that I've started doing is in my inner work, in my meditations, I've been exploring eternity a little more. I've been exploring immortality a little more. What it means to be immortal. So if my true identity is that of a soul, how can I experience that more? Now there are better days sometimes, and then there's days that just sort of fall apart. And I find myself like I'm lying through my teeth to get out of situations that I just don't have time for.
Yeah.
I'm like, how is this beneficial? But it's really helping me reshape my outlook on time. If I'm an eternal being, if soul is a point of light and an eternal being, I can handle this.
Yeah.
So, and another thought that has been helping me is like, wherever I am, whatever time it is, it's my time to internally connect with the source. So every time I find myself like watching the clock or what time is it? Oh, what's next? Like where do I need to run to? It's time to be in my eternal home.
Yeah.
So, that thought has been really helpful. Thank you for letting me share.
That was lovely. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing
For
that.
listening. What have you been working on?
It's interesting. I think, first of all, that was gorgeous. Thank you so much for speaking. But I feel like...
Certainly.
What? Oh, my name is Nikita. Nice to meet you guys. The thought that I was having as you were speaking was, I think when I was younger and I had periods of just like more tangible, like very obvious adversity, I think I actually did a much better job of like calming myself down and not letting things get to me. And I think now that I'm in a period of peace, it's actually that weird inherent switch where like someone cutting me off on the subway station or something like bothers me a lot more than it used to. And I think that's kind of interesting where it's like this idea of like poignant pain and like the periphery around it dictates how you interpret everything around you. And I think it's maybe just a remembrance of like self-soothing and self-calming is important. I think and perspective is important. And I think the one thing that I've been struggling with a lot is like, yeah, there's like the very obvious things of life where sometimes you feel lonely, sometimes you wonder why you're like not finding companionship, you're worrying about these things. And I think that is in itself bothersome to me often, but I think I'm also starting to get into a new career where the topic is just quite heavy, and it's like working with children in armed conflict. And I think when you compare anything to that, everything feels little, but everything also feels like so much more tied to the earth in a way that you're like, why would people do this? This doesn't make sense. These are bad things. And it's just this odd duality of like, in some ways, that perspective is good to keep because it makes just like sometimes these negative feelings feel smaller and feel a little less important, but it also becomes a deep tethering to the earth in a way that you can't work your way through a bad feeling. So I think that's kind of the struggle of like, yeah, where is perspective important, and where can too much perspective and too much scope reduce what a thing should feel and how it can work your way through the body. So I think that's kind of, I don't have a good answer, but that's the thought at the moment.
Yeah, and the thing is, expecting things to go the way you expect, sets you up for disappointment.
Totally.
And so, as long as you are open, you of course have a plan, you have a destination, but understand that if there has to be a diversion, then the important thing is to stay present rather than to be in a state of what if, or feeling that you are losing, rather than taking advantage of the moment that you're in. The diversion could lead to, and if you're paying attention, you'll get some benefit out of it that you would not otherwise have without the unexpected. And that is that's the temperament, that is the attitude, that is the shift in the consciousness that will not have you be apprehensive about anything. Have your plans, but understand that those plans may have to be changed.
Have a plan and have plan B, C,
Yeah.
D.
Yeah.
That's true. I'm tired.
What did you mean by this is a period of peace for you,
Well, I think like,
as opposed to like what it was before?
yeah, I think like, there was just, I think growing up there's like something quite bad happening, or someone passed away, or someone was sick, or et cetera, et cetera. I think this is like the first time where everyone is just like mostly healthy.
Yeah.
And like, I think a couple of people have passed away recently, but it's also like me with age realizing like, that's okay. And
Yeah.
that's a kind of piece.
And the change ought to be joyful,
Yeah, also that.
Yeah.
The required change has to be joyful, or else it's not beneficial.
Yeah. It is just interesting that you label it that way, because it's almost like there's an expectation with this being a period where like bad things are not happening as like they were. So like maybe there's this expectation that I should feel good because I went through so much difficult things and I felt like I could go through it, and now it's actually like the benefit of those things not happening is like giving you more time to
Sit and reflect.
yeah, and then you're like, oh, there's all this stuff under the surface that
You're like, oops.
maybe I didn't deal with.
Oh, I was pushing away my feelings?
Yeah. So it was just interesting to me when you said that, because I just was like, you know, I feel like our peace, like even our daily peace gets like pretty disturbed.
Yeah. The important thing is to appreciate that the power lies over here, and not over there. And so when you understand that you have the power, in other words, nothing or no one, no situation has any meaning in and of itself, except the meaning that you give it, okay? So that it is in your power to determine, to decide what it means. But we forget that in the moment, and we immediately become victimized, rather than be able to assess the situation and determine what we are going to make it mean, and do that to your benefit. And it changes everything. The second half of our session with you tonight, we're going to be looking at some methods to do that. But before we do that, is there anyone on Zoom that had a special realization that they want to share with us? Anything came up that you are in the midst of, or that you had some reason to feel regret, that by changing and looking differently, you can see why it was beneficial, or why it happened, and see yourself as the beneficiary?
Well, I can actually, my name is Anna. A couple of years ago, the company I used to work for went out of business. So I had to completely change my career and start a new job in a new field. And I was very excited to start it, but when I actually started it, I encountered all sorts of challenges. Not only it was a new field, there were some it was a very toxic environment. So my first instinct was, I need to leave and look for something else to escape this environment. And that's probably what I would have done years ago. But I decided to stay and to learn how to deal with it. There were some difficult personalities I had to learn to deal with. And what I realized 2 years later, I'm glad that I didn't run away, I didn't quit, and I didn't move on to something else. Just because I guess it was a learning experience how to deal with a difficult personality and how to stay sane and positive in the environment which could be not very positive. Okay, I don't know if I'm explaining this, but the benefit of all this was that I kind of became more tolerant. I learned how to see things in a different perspective, and even this person kind of changed over this time because she realized that, people maybe do not react the same way to her. And so it was a completely different experience, and it was very transformative in a way.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, because I wish I learned it earlier in my life. You
Well,
know?
it's never too late. It's never too late. And
Yes, because
yeah,
sometimes we just want to escape, right? When we face certain challenges and obstacles, but it's not always the answer.
yeah,
Especially maybe it's not easy to escape and you kind of have to be in it, but it's just changing the whole attitude and yourself in a way. I'm not saying it's been easy, but it's definitely, I'm kind of, I learned a lot about myself as well through this experience.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. The important thing is that you didn't let the circumstances take charge.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you restored the power to where it belongs, which is with you. Because
That's right.
as I was saying earlier, we get to decide what it means all the time, all the time. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I can share in a situation that turned out in a way that maybe was unexpected. I built a team, I had a team of about like 10, 12 people at my job, and then basically like in a 15-minute conversation with my boss, he was like, hey, we're gonna move 6 of your people off your team and give it to someone else. Not performance related, not just because he was like, this is how I think the team should be structured, and he was a new manager for me, and so I was like pretty upset.
Yes.
I was also just kind of like, how can you make this decision without even consulting me? Like, because I was like he's like, oh, I talked to a lot of people. I'm like, but you didn't talk to me, who's like, I built this team and you're coming in. And so I was like, even when I think about it, I can even feel some of the like feeling of like, oh, this was like injustice in a way. And that, I like, and it wasn't even like I cared so much about having a big team or anything, or like keeping it, but like, I think it was just like the manner in which it was done felt like very
Yeah.
wrong to me. And it was really hard for me to zoom out and be like, well, but like, what does this actually mean for me? And like, because basically my job changed, like what I was focused on changed, like my team members, what they were focusing on changed as well. And so, but then what happened was like, this happened maybe like 3 months ago, and like a job that was like really chaotic, I actually like lost a bunch of the kind of things that were making it chaotic, and actually my life at work got super easy. And it was tough in the beginning because I had to like create a new like business, and I was like, I just had all these feelings towards my boss, which are just like, I don't like you, and I don't, like, I just like, and I was just like coming in with a very kind of like victim mentality, and I just realized like I was taking it home and I was doing stuff, and I was just like, this isn't benefiting me at all, and I'm like, I'm just hurting myself. And so then, like, when that perspective started to change, like, I was like, okay, like, if I can learn to be happy in this situation, like, I can deal with anything.
Any situation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And literally now I'm like, okay, I like my boss. And and it's so funny because over this last week, I was like chanting this morning, and I started laughing because 2 of the people who got moved off of my team onto somebody else's team are now, we're talking about how they're going to come back to my team.
Yeah. Yeah.
and in those like 3 months, they just have to do all this chaotic stuff that I actually didn't have to deal with. I just kind of and now they're coming back to do something that's like on the team that I built or whatever, re kind of oriented it. And so I was just laughing, and I'm just like, actually, it was like so great that like that happened to me, because like
Yeah.
it actually just made me so less attached to the work
Mm-hmm.
in a way of like, but
Yeah.
not in like a,
Yeah, that's the
I don't
right word,
care.
attached. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I just
yeah.
like I'm here to show up and do my job and
Mhm.
like be here for my team, and then I leave, and
Wonderful.
now
Yeah.
and now
What
I
a-
came back.
yeah.
So
What
that
an
was cool.
important lesson, because there was not that many changes over there. You changed, and the entire situation that you were dealing with, you could then begin to see all of what was possible, and you can't see that, you can't see it if you're angry and being victimized, and so that is really the value of appreciating that. You can't, you can seldom change people or change a circumstance, but you can change how you relate to it. And that's really what matters, how you're relating to it. So it doesn't have to turn out the way you expected, because you will retain the power to interpret it in a way that's beneficial and get the most value from that situation. So that's really good.
It's so interesting how you said attachment, because that has been like my thing too. Like I'm so attached to my time, like you know, like, and you let go of like, oh, this is a team that I built, and then this was my team, and I wasn't consulted. So, but and you let go of that whatever ego was that came along with it. So that's what I'm also working on. Like, you know, like it's not my time. Like time is neutral. Like how I approach it, and how I can scale back, and how I can sort of take on responsibilities that I can really manage better. You know, so I'm also sort of working with that. Oh, this is it's on my clock, and it needs to be done a certain way. Yeah. So that's a huge scaling back there.
I mean, even when I was just talking about it, I was taken back to that, and I was feeling those feelings again. It's just so interesting how easy it is to just come back to that, like, oh, I've been wronged, I'm the victim.
Yeah.
But it's also like easy to be like, oh, but I'm actually super happy right now, so you know, like everything's good.
Indeed.
It's true.
Indeed.
Thanks for sharing.
Wonderful. Okay. Anyone else before we show you the scientific method? We have. Okay, so I'll turn the rest of the evening over to Achal, and he's going to give you the formula now that and that will always work. Okay, so pay close attention.
So there is no one formula to deal with these things, I feel, but just a few thoughts first, and I was also trying to reflect on the different situations that we come across and what has been unexpected for me for the past few months. So I just like to learn from people around us mostly, and I feel like people always have something or the other to teach us in some or the other way. And I was talking to a friend, I think a couple of months ago, and he's very active, and he's very involved and passionate about a lot of things. He plays good piano, for example. He's fond of racing. He's I don't know whatnot. He's fond of cars and stuff. He's very active. And in that conversation, he told me something that kind of stayed with me. And I was like, okay, that's a good way of approaching these different scenes of life, of drama. And what he said was, we are doing these studies and all, and we are in college and stuff, but thus he makes sure that that's only like little bit of his life. He doesn't want to give it like more than like 10-20% of his time, all of what he does. And that was quite like striking. It stood out for me. I'm like, okay, because I, on the other hand, try to make my life what I'm doing. And I was like, okay, that's a new perspective, and I never thought in that way. So that was one of the unexpected things that I encountered a few months ago, and I'm trying to keep that mindset within me as I go through different challenges that come across. Now, on this thing about expectations, right? So when it comes to like dealing with the unexpected, one thing that I like to keep within myself is this: before a situation even shows up, before a challenge even shows up, what's the expectation that I'm carrying? We are it's so subtle sometimes that we attach these expectations with people, with situations, with things, and when we do not get that result back in, which is not in sync with our expectations, then all these other feelings get triggered. Sometimes anger, sometimes negativity, and things like that. And so we can always get back to that stage and just check and reflect on ourselves. Okay, what's the expectation I'm carrying out of it? And as Brother Ananta highlighted, what is in it for me in terms of learning, in terms of emotionally getting and creating that space for myself, and then holding on to that space even when I'm in that situation, so that I can share that power and that stage with others around me. So, let's say if some friends are having a heated discussion in a room and we enter the room, we are not even a part of that discussion, but we'll feel that, we'll catch those vibrations, we'll catch it through their expressions and just the atmosphere of the room. And so, even though I was not physically part of it, it might be very easy to just become a part of it and get influenced by it and become a part, and then just maybe even give our inputs and make this thing even more complicated than it has to be. But on the other hand, I could always go back and just check, okay, I was never a part of this discussion. I can just maintain my state of peace and state of calm. If there is some constructive input that I can provide, sure. And if they're receptive of that, then sure. If not, it's okay. I can still maintain my state and just share those vibrations and that state of calmness with them. So that's what I was thinking on when you were mentioning about this whole topic about expecting the unexpected. And the formula that you're mentioning about, well, that's just a little memory I have of my chemistry lesson. Don't worry, I'm not going to walk through a lot of algebra, but maybe a little bit, just to do with addition and subtraction. So let's see. I'm going to maybe use the other. So this thing is, my chemistry teacher. I feel like I've been fortunate to have very good teachers throughout my life, but then this is one thing that is very close to me. And whenever he started this topic about thermodynamics, right? Mm-hmm. Have you heard of it before? In some way, maybe all of us have heard of it, right? Maybe it's I feel that's the most difficult topic for me personally. There's so many equations to remember and things. But he started his lecture with striking this off and writing here thermodynamics. That was his style of teaching, you know. And I'm like, okay, that's something cool. And one equation that is very, very central to this whole idea is it's kind of this. Don't worry about the symbols. We're going to give them meaning in a second. So you can understand G as maybe God, or we can understand this as maybe our ideal self.
Like good.
Good. That's it. Nice thing. And like we have a certain way we have a certain notion of who we want to be and how we want to be throughout life, right? Throughout this journey. How do we want to have even our daily interactions with our friends, with colleagues, with everyone. So that could be like, all of it could be like in the ideal self we want to be like, okay? This could be our human element. So feelings of maybe sometimes anger that show up from time and again. Disappointment.
Inadequacy.
Rejection.
Inadequacy, rejection. Any more?
Joy.
Well, we will not put it in the human element. We'll put it in the spiritual element. That's our innate virtue, our innate quality. Joy. Or peace. Or happiness. Many more. And now, what this tells us, the thing is, we want to approach this. And barring the technical things, we just want to make sure that this whole thing takes up a negative value somehow. So, if we come across, or if we find ourselves in a position where the human element is more at that particular instant, at that particular situation, than our spiritual element, we are immediately turning away from our ideal self, right? The way we would want to be, our real, just full with these virtues of peace, power, bliss, happiness. We are just turning away from it. If this is more and if this is less, I should actually use. So if the human element is more and this is less, we are turning away from our ideal self, ideal good self, the good part. If we find ourselves in situations where this is more, but this is less, we are in the right direction. So it's not really an equation to kind of monitor or the equation of life or anything, but for me it's a nice checking point for myself at different instants of time. And every situation I would have to check it differently, because in some situations, in some experiences, I might find this to be dominating. In some situations, I might find this to be dominating. And so I can always check, am I in the right direction? Right.
So you want to minimize
The human element.
Yes, you want to minimize the human element.
And work on the spiritual.
And that's because the human element is mostly ego.
Ego. Big one. Yeah, ego. Yes.
And changing also.
And changing, of course.
So fluctuating.
Yes. But then, more to, then there's this idea about changing. It's not really that we work on changing that much. Mm-hmm. It's really to do with what is my focus on. So if Sister Rona mentions this example quite often, there are, let's say, two kids who are playing, right? And they have their own toys and everything. And there's this kid who is very stuck with his toy truck, right? And he's so busy playing with that. And on the other hand, the other kid is enjoying all the other toys as well. He's not stuck on this one little toy truck. And so it's not changing, it's rather just turning our focus and awareness to something more and something more enjoyable. And accepting, there's a level of acceptance maybe also involved in that. So what we're accepting into it, and then just enjoying these different things, different toys. And in a sense, these toys could be in our real world, in our immediate vicinity. It could be our jobs, it could be our, it could be money, and many other things, just toys. So is my focus, so as brother was mentioning his example, so because he kept his focus on himself and what lesson he could take out of it, so he focused on his peace and his happiness. And so even though it took effort to bring the focus to that, but there was no effort in like changing that. So realization is like, happens in a second, happens quickly. Yeah.
I feel like this is a concept I struggle with a lot because I was and am very Jain, and I feel like this idea of antagonism versus anger and joy, anger and peace comes, I think, sometimes at a cost where I think I was just taught that like you can't be angry, you can't be disappointed, etc., in as much to try and build joy, build peace, build happiness. But I don't think they're actually quite in antagonism with each other. I feel like, if anything, it's a fluid feedback loop, right? It's like this idea of anger is a good identification of boundary that brings you back to the identity of self,
Yes.
that brings you back to peace.
Yeah.
So it's like, good. I think like anger is good. Like, existing with disappointment is also good
Yeah.
because it allows you to see the scope of your expectation to then realize that you have bypassed your expectation.
Right. Yeah.
Is it okay if I say
Yeah, sure.
something as
Yeah.
well? So I used to think very similarly, but as I started experimenting with more of inner peace and inner happiness and that place where I'm more calm and more still and more ready to deal with what's out there, I realized that my spiritual element was the grounding force, while the anger, for example, or the agitation, yes, it serves as a point of checking, but it's not natural. So that was my big learning point. So if I am engaging with the anger, even as a self-check point, how deep and how productive is my connecting back to my inner peace and my inner happiness? Was like that a big shift in my approach to accepting anger or looking at agitation and triggers. That is what sort of brought my level of reactions to those triggers, and it sort of nullified them. So I found that I came to a place where what my triggers of anger were, they were no longer my triggers of anger. And I thought that was a better place to be than looking at anger as a self-check point and then coming back.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. I think it's like this idea of when you're raised to fully antagonize those feelings, there becomes an immediate nullification of self that I don't think is a true nullification, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like this, I think that's kind of how I was raised, and then maybe with adulthood, you start to realize that, like, yeah, these feelings are real feelings, and now you have to work through them and get back to the peace. But I think sometimes if you just say this bad, this good, you don't even look at the bad, and you like pretend it's not happening, and that's the worst version of it.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think like that's the ultimate goal, but I think like describing it as just sheer antagonism without describing maybe some of the benefits, I think can actually take you away from the final place you want to be.
Right.
Okay. I just want, can I add to it? Like, I don't think that they're in, like you were saying, like, I think sometimes it's just shown as, like I think for this example, it's like, oh, they're like, you lessen this, but, like, even people who are God-realized beings, like Krishna, still got mad, right? Or anger, like when Ashwatthama, like, sent the whatever nuclear bomb to kill the baby, like he was angry, and rightly so. And that wasn't coming from a place of ego. That was coming from like a place of like this was
Setting the wrong right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
What
also
shouldn't be.
by cursing him, he also was experiencing sadness for that. Like he is going to experience that too, and so like. Just like I think like we view spirituality as like it's all these things, but I agree that it's not in the absence of those things. It's just that like, oh, okay, there's love that is behind the anger, or there's love that's behind the sadness of like, oh, why this happened. So I think, but this is like going back to your point. It's like when these things are tied to the ego, that is like that's the human element.
Yeah,
to me.
right. No, that's very rightly said. And yeah, for me, you know, it's again what Aparna was sharing, that it's a checking point, but just realizing that it's really not my, like, in different situations and different challenges, my decisions can come, my response, not reaction, my response can come from a very different place. And that is what we can shift. So even though, yes, there could be this little anger, this little, you know, irritation that we could be working on, and that we can act that as a trigger, we can associate that with the trigger, but it's not innate, and it's not a place I would feel comfortable with all the time. And so for me, when I'm at a place where I'm more calm, where I'm more peaceful, I am more aware of my thoughts and my emotions, I can come from a better place. So that's the equation. One little funny thing about this is sometimes there are situations where we find this is also kind of dominating a lot. But at the same time, we also find ourselves, you know, there's a lot of mercy maybe coming in or flowing in. And then this becomes more important. Now, ideally, this stands for temperature, but this maybe here in this context can be understood as intensity or the level of, intensity is the right word, I guess, that we have towards ourselves in those moments, in those situations.
What if it's intoxication?
Yeah, so still, but it's going to manifest itself in some form of intensity, right? We want it like so dearly. You know, we want this thing. And so if the goal is set, if I hold my aim and objective to the good self, and this is high and this is also high, sometimes I need to be a little bit more intense with myself. And that's okay. Right?
Turn up the heat.
And turn up the heat, hence temperature. And lastly, there could be situations where, you know, okay, I don't feel that much of ego or anger or disappointment or anything, but, you know, the other side of ego, you know, feelings like, oh, you know, I cannot do anything, I'm not worth it, I just don't have these skills. That's the other side of it. And so we might be feeling very low on these feelings. And at the same time, our self-respect is also kind of low at that moment, at that situation. In those times, I need to be gentle with myself, lower the heat, right? So that we can still approach our good self. So that's a little thing I keep in mind. How does this really come into thermodynamics? Maybe it's a topic for a whole different evening. But
no, I think it'll be so worth exploring how we can be intense with ourselves and how we can be gentle with ourselves, yet keep the good, you know, that aim and objective, and like how do we align more to that?
Yeah, once we don't lose the aim and objective.
Yes.
That's the important thing.
yeah,
Right, like where I'm headed, what is the purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing. You know, why do I wake up at 4 a.m.?
Yeah. So the idea is we hold this thought and we hold these little wisdom nuggets that we might have received from today and take them with us in our daily life, daily situations, and apply them and put them into action. That's the goal.
And there'll be plenty of opportunities to do that in the days ahead.
So let's close. We are already above time, so let's close with a minute of silence and then we can. Om Shanti. Thank you. Thank you. We have many more things you can take advantage of. We have a YouTube channel as well. We are kind of working on it. There are QR codes at the reception for our Facebook and YouTube channels, even our Instagram. So you can always look up and explore and take benefit of all the other upcoming events and opportunities. So welcome once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.